Welcome back to A View to a Grill. I'm Johnny. Today I'm going to go over what I think are the 8 biggest mistakes when grilling steak. The first mistake when grilling steak is that you didn't choose the right steak. One of the things in picking out a steak is that you may pick out a steak that is too thin. It is much harder to hit the temperature on a thin steak than a thick steak. What you want to do is try, if you can, to get a steak that is about 1.5 inches. This came out of the butcher's cabinet from my local HEB, and it is just a hair under 1.5 inches. I have 3 steaks that are my go-to steaks. The first one is the New York strip. My next go-to steak is the ribeye, and then the third steak that I don't get as often as the other 2 is the picanha. When you're picking a steak, try to get them all the same thickness, because a consistent thickness gives you consistent results. Now, when you choose to get these directly from the butcher, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but I'd rather have 2 thick steaks than 3 or 4 thin steaks. Here are the New York strips. Now you see this is about 2 pounds of steak here, and that's going to feed my family of 4. Check out these ribeyes. You're paying for all of this marbling for almost the same weight of steaks. These 2 steaks came out to almost $38. I think of it like this: those steaks do cost a lot of money, but it's still a lot cheaper to buy these steaks for yourself and take them home than it is to go get the same quality of steak at a restaurant. And then here's that picanha. Now, this is a choice picanha. You can see that it does have some marbling. You can also see that it's a pretty thick steak. It's actually a little bit thicker than those 2 steaks I just showed you. The really nice thing, at least here, they're typically a little bit less than even the New York strip. This is about 2 pounds, and the price is $16.81. That's a pretty good deal for a picanha. The next mistake I want to talk about is you are not using enough salt. I don't always dry brine my steaks, but I try to always dry brine my steak because the result is just better. Here I'm sprinkling a little bit of kosher salt onto the steak, and what it's going to do, it's going to dissolve and then get reabsorbed back into the steak. And you do that by leaving it in the refrigerator overnight. The next day when you remove your steak out of the refrigerator, it's going to look like this. And the really nice thing is that the surface of your steak is going to be dry. A dry surface gives you a better chance of a nice crust when you sear your steaks. When it's time to season your steaks, I generally use a 2-to-1 ratio of salt and coarse ground pepper. I season it as if I didn't dry brine it in the refrigerator, because a nice thick steak is going to be able to take all the seasoning you put on it. And take a look at this. This is a nice even coat of seasoning for a steak. The next mistake is you did not let it relax before grilling. I'm holding this steak with a couple of my fingers from underneath, and there is very little bend to this steak, and that's because I just took it out of the refrigerator. It is cold and rigid. If you let your steak relax, and I'm not saying to let it come up to room temperature, I'm saying to let it relax. I set my steak out 10 to 15 minutes before grilling, and now look at what happens when I pick it up. The steak has a lot of bend to it, and it's soft. I don't have any scientific proof, but I think it makes for a better end product. And this is what I mean when I say I'm not allowing it to come up to room temperature. If I temp this steak right now, you see that it is still a cool 56 degrees internally. The next mistake when grilling a steak is your grill is not hot enough. When you're grilling your steak, you're going to want plenty of hot coals. Here's my setup. I have a slow and sear, and I have some leftover charcoal from my last grilling session. If you now take a look inside of my chimney starter, I have it filled up to about 2/3 of the way full, because I still want the equivalent of a full chimney starter in my slow and sear. I'm not going to pour my lit charcoal until all the coals are blazing hot. Also, you want to spread your coals around to eliminate any cool zones so that you have a nice hot temperature all the way across your grill. I'll then close the lid and just let everything preheat for about 5 minutes. Now, since you have thick steaks, you can start your steaks off on the indirect side of the grill. When the temperature gets to that 80-degree range, that's my cue for me to start searing my steaks, because my goal is medium rare to medium. Once they get up to that 80-degree range, go ahead and move them over the direct heat. And here's what I mean by a nice hot fire. Look at these flames. They are thrusting up, kissing the bottom of your steak, and just flaring up in between the steaks. That's a hot flame. And if you're wondering how hot it is over the coals, well, it's this hot. Having your fire that hot allows you to achieve this color. The next mistake that folks make when grilling a steak, you did not let the steak rest. Letting your steak rest is important. It relaxes again right there on your plate, and the juices inside get redistributed. The next mistake for steaks I want to talk about is you didn't account for the carryover temperature. When you first take your steak off the grill, it continues to cook during that resting period. You have to account for carryover temperature. Take a look at this. When I took this picanha off at 5:33, it was reading 128 degrees of internal temperature. I let this absolutely beautiful picanha rest for about 4 minutes. And then 4 minutes later, 5:37, the temperature rose to 134 degrees. In 4 minutes, we got 6 extra degrees of temperature. To hit the temperature of steak you like, you have to account for carryover temperature. Now we cut our picanha open and we accounted for our carryover temperature, so we have this beautiful medium rare steak that was absolutely delicious. The next mistake that folks make when grilling their steaks is that they cut into their steak to check for doneness. Do not cut into your steak to check for doneness. Instead, get an instant read thermometer. Now I know people who say you shouldn't even be poking a hole in your steak. If you can't tell the temp by touching, then the only other way is to get an instant read thermometer, and that will tell you exactly what the temperature is inside of your steak. This last mistake is, to me, the biggest mistake that you can make when grilling your steak, and that is you didn't grill it to the temperature that you enjoy. Now remember, this is your steak, so you might as well eat it at a temperature you enjoy. Even if the crowd says, "Why are you overcooking your steak?" If that's where you like your steak, then that's how you should grill your steak. Here's mine. I like mine medium rare going into medium, or medium rare or medium. I have a wide range of the way I like my steak. But I do have people, and I sometimes have to grill steaks like this. This is a medium well steak. Personally, I wouldn't eat my steak like that, but my guest did want their steak like that. So there you go, a medium well steak. And medium well can still be juicy. The next time you're grilling a steak, grill it to your liking, especially if you paid for it. Don't even care what other people say about how you like your steak. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, go ahead and take a minute, subscribe to the channel. You're gonna love it. Thank you for watching A View to a Grill. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, y'all.